Embodied ego strength. Today we're circling around the question of how expansive, how receptive, how resilient is your ego if it's a mirror or a reflection of your window of tolerance. So we're looking at ego psychology and merging it with nervous system theory so you can develop a very grounded, embodied presence, sense of self that can handle adversity and that can push past the comfort zone of your current psychological, physiological framework. We want to incorporate as much of the peripheral energies that we're afraid of as we can so that we can really play with this realm. We can move past these silly little boundaries that we've created for ourselves. We can really understand the intensity of life and how to work with that. Okay, so the first thing that we'll look at is your ego structure, and I've done many videos on this, so check those out. But for the sake of this video, we want to look at the ego that you have right now by me asking you this question of how do you respond to adversity? Do you play small? Do you allow other people to take the lead? Do you feel a sense of insecurity? Or do you respond to adversity being a little bit more dominating, aggressive, but to such an extent that you kind of dismantle the whole experience that could be a teaching lesson and it gets blown out of proportion. Okay, which side do you weigh on? Just addressing your ego and the way that you've structured the sense of self, it's all on the way that we've been raised, but to know and to really like recognize your ego is so important. Okay, how do you face adversity? How do you go through that? Now, what we want to get to is this beautiful fulcrum point, the center, which is going to be a healthy ego. And some characteristics of this is to be resilient, adaptable, self-aware, and this is really the refinement that we would love to be in. Okay, it's to be flexible and pliable. That is a strong ego center. That's a strong ego complex. So, looking at the ego as it is, we want to now bring in the window of tolerance. And what this is, your nervous system is just so brilliant that it has this zone, which is considered to be an optimal place where you can regulate intense emotions in a healthy way. So it's very much mindful, it's very attuned. When you're in this optimal zone, you can handle a lot of life with such ease. It's as though you're kind of in this fluid emotion, and that's where the happy places when you are feeling comfortable with your sense of self in a certain experience. Now, what happens when we come up to adversity? This is where your window of tolerance needs to expand. Is that you may fall into a state of dysregulation or disassociation, which could cause depersonalization, just because you're no longer in this optimal zone and you're being challenged by life, by people, by a certain event to, uh, you know, partake in that because life is not all easy and dandy. There's challenges. And so, it's asking you to partake in this specific discomfort so that you can kind of pull it in and build more of an ego foundation. But to do this is very tricky because you have to go outside of your comfort zone, which means we have to kind of push past this boundary line, which is right before you lead into disassociation. So it's like you have your window of tolerance, and within that window, once you start to get a little rattled, well, you're coming up to this place where you could easily break those boundaries to become dysregulated by your specific hyperarousal response. So your body is being activated and charged, and you could potentially go into that disassociated state and completely lose the ability to be in that very intense affective state. So, how do we do this? How do we, have and work with such intensity? Okay. The way to do this is to recognize your window of tolerance and then to widen it with a lot of mindfulness practices because again, this is about feeling comfortable in the uncomfortable, and that's the only way that we can strengthen the ego. I hate to say that because no one wants to feel like this yuck and this scarcity, the anxiety. No one wants to experience their symptoms, but they happen. And then when they overcome us and we're taken over by this great archetypal realm, and then we're like, who am I? What's happening? Like, how did I get here? I don't like the way I responded. I don't like how I just played so small. Everything went south because I wasn't able to hold my ground, to hold my center. Okay, so the window of tolerance being this optimal place where we can regulate all of our emotions, we are actually going to recognize when we have the symptoms of feeling anxious, of feeling overwhelmed, maybe a little angry and fussy, recognizing those symptoms and then addressing, okay, what is causing this? What is causing me to respond or to want to respond in such an inflated or deflated way? And that's overcoming my entire system. So that's just recognizing where am I at in my window of tolerance? Okay, on a scale of 1 to 5, what is this experience? And then how are we going to widen this? This is where the mindfulness practice comes in of becoming so aware of the present moment and being able to be open to the good and the bad, to the yuck, to the goodness, like being so open to different possibilities, um, and then really just kind of coming back to the allowing the discomfort to be there, but then kind of like pulling it back down and in with some self-regulation, which if you can imagine a way to self-regulate when you're in discomfort, maybe you have to like touch your chest, coming back, centering down and in. It's almost like you can make a pit stop to self-regulate while you're still a part of such, you know, um, intense states. And so the main way that we build the ego is through being able to handle adversity, um, with kind of utilizing that chaos and allowing that to charge us to expand that window of tolerance just a bit more. Okay, I hope that this makes sense. The greatest key factor in this whole video is to challenge or to invite challenge into your life so that your ego can expand, but then also so that you can learn what it feels like to be a rooted sense of self when there's so much going on. Okay, we can't stop life. Life doesn't just halt, we go with it. And we have to learn how to ride those waves. Okay, so I hope this video has supported you. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll catch you in the next video.